What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the RotoGrinders Advanced Sports Analytics Show. I'm your host, Travis Mangone, back with my buddy Stewart here. How's it going over there, Stewart?
Pretty good. Recovering from a heavy Thanksgiving. Enjoying my Black Friday bank holiday, and happy to be on the show again this week.
Yeah, man. Happy to be on the show again, too, talking NFL with you. We all were diving into the main slate yesterday, not the main slate, the Thanksgiving slate, which was fun. And now we got to dive into the main slate. I'm sure a bunch of us are behind, but we'll help catch you up here on the Advanced Sports Analytics Show. Before we kind of dive in and get to the breakdowns of everything, want to talk about some things. First, if you guys are watching this over there on YouTube, please feel free. Give us the like, give us the subscribe. We would really, really appreciate that. Helps us out a ton here over at RotoGrinders. Also wanted to mention over here on RotoGrinders, we have the NFL Yahoo free roll this weekend. You get to use the lineup HQ for free, all the premium features and whatnot, and you get to make 150 lineups and put them in the free roll. And if you're putting 150 in there, you may as well throw 150 in some of the other contests they have going on over at Yahoo. So head on over, check out our lineup HQ, our premium tools, and check out the Yahoo tournaments going on over there and join in the fun, join in on the free roll. But let's dive right in. Let's talk about some Week 12 review, Stewart. I'm blanking on what even happened last week because, we just had the Thanksgiving slate and everything. But, it was an overall good week for me. Thinking back, I didn't do too bad. How about yourself?
Yeah, last week was a roller coaster. I think after the afternoon games, I was at like negative 98%, just like looking down the barrel of just a terrible week. But I had Fournette and Henry in the late games, and those guys bailed me out to just above break even. But I had kind of just like checked out because I was just like, well, I guess I'm losing all my money this week. And I checked back in like an hour later, I think kind of shortly after those double Henry touchdowns, and somehow got back in it. But I think where, my lineup build kind of fell a little flat, and I think I was there's a tough decision, I think, for me to make. I was between Matt Ryan and Baker Mayfield. One thing sometimes I feel like in my quarterback selection I lose sight of is just how much pressure we can project to be applied to a quarterback. And, I think naturally, like, my selection process gravitates towards, implied points of a team, maybe allowance of a team per pass attempt, any sort of rushing upside that a quarterback might have. And I kind of lose sight of maybe how much pressure we can expect to be applied to a quarterback. And I thought those two guys were just an interesting dichotomy of Baker, a guy who you could project to just have a really clean pocket going up against Miami, playing from the lead, and Matt Ryan kind of the other side, just a really weak offensive line. And I think it was kind of unclear how the game script would go, but Tampa Bay, I think, actually defensively applies a decent amount of pressure at quarterback. And I don't know, I made the wrong call. But I kind of, as Sunday was unfolding, kept thinking back to that kind of decision I made, and maybe my lack of consideration for just how clean of a pocket maybe these quarterbacks we could project them to have. It was definitely something I was kind of thinking about, with Matt Ryan playing on a Thursday slate, trying to carry that, maybe learning through to Thursday. So I don't know. It's that was kind of one thing I was thinking about coming off of Week 12, and just getting on a guy that, you could have seen having a lot of pressure, and that really turned out to be the case both on Thanksgiving and Week 12 for Ryan. That's kind of one of my takeaways from Week 12.
Yeah, man. Matt Ryan, the whole Falcons team has just been, no one's been able to get it right, at least as of late. It's been frustrating and confusing. One guy I do want to mention is Leonard Fournette. We saw that squeaky wheel end up working out, and he's going to be an interesting guy to look at this week with, the situation going on, because he's getting a ton of pass work, but he is going against a really tough, run team. So that's one guy I definitely want to touch upon when we get into that. Let's talk about any other Thanksgiving review stuff. Any takeaways you got there? I mean, the Cowboys, man, that was an ugly one from them. Mitch Trubisky, I don't think he's back or anything. I think he's, just taking advantage of some, decent situations, and they're trying to cater to him a little better, which is definitely good. It seems like Nagy's trying to cater to him a little more, but I don't know. I'm still not a really big buyer in Mitch Trubisky in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, I'm not either. But I was kind of trying to carry that pressure projection through. And I think Mitch was the guy on Thanksgiving that you could project to have arguably the cleanest pocket. Maybe Drew Brees, just because that Saints offensive line is so great. But I think, if you were to boil down like some sort of aggregation of expected or lack thereof expected, quarterback pressure per dollar, like I thought Mitch was a really strong play. He was actually the quarterback that was kind of showing up at the top of this optimizer tool that we rolled out earlier this week. And, I think, I don't know, maybe, a blind squirrel catches and finds a nut, but I really thought like, the projectability of Mitch's, having time to throw the ball, boded well for him. And, I kind of want to keep thinking about that as I'm moving forward through the rest of the season, being wary of quarterbacks that maybe have the possibility to just be under pressure all game, and maybe recognizing that there is a somewhat of a dangerous floor with some of those guys. So that's kind of my thoughts from Thanksgiving. The Blau thing was obviously fun for, a couple, about a quarter. But man, these cheap quarterbacks, like, it doesn't take much for them to hit that value. I think on a slate where maybe some of the other quarterbacks got a little less production, I think he would have been a, pretty strong lineup piece for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Blau wasn't bad. He was better than we thought. It was at least fun, right? That first game was kind of expecting to be ugly, I guess you could say. But overall, solid Thanksgiving. I made some money, so I can't complain. And, kind of on to the main slate. But, Stewart, before we get into the main slate, I wanted to ask you a question here. You got a little tool over here at, Advanced Sports Analytics, this optimization tool. And I wanted to kind of give you the opportunity to share more about it.
Yeah, so we I think to date, a lot of our work at ASA has been on doing a lot of data aggregation, data cleaning to produce metrics that players can use to incorporate into their lineup construction. Intermediate to advanced players, I think, have a good understanding for, how to incorporate some of these metrics. And we've kind of been leaving the task of weighting properly all these, inputs that we might consider into their lineup construction. But I think the goal all along has been to put together a algorithm that does weight, I guess, all these different decision metrics that we're making decisions around, and putting that into an optimization or projection and optimization tool. So we actually finished that up earlier this week. Had it rolled out for Thanksgiving. Had it free access for Thanksgiving. Our optimal lineup did kind of sneak inside the cash line and the double ups, and some other, alternative lineups further down also performed pretty well in cash. Not sure. I didn't do any triple ups this weekend. I think maybe our top DAC lineup might have sneaked in. But, I wanted to go through and just kind of try to give the quickest tutorial possible I could on maybe how to use the tools from just a, keystroke and functionality standpoint. Maybe also just some kind of thought pieces on how to incorporate the tools. So when you go to the ASA page, you can go to the NFL drop-down menu, select Optimizer, and you're taken to the tool. So this is the interface of the tool right here. It's kind of a tabular-based tool where we got all these tabs on the top where it's just different projections for different positions. And, we have raw fantasy points projections right here, as well as a value metric, which is just kind of a function that's considering, projected points versus salary, et cetera, et cetera. I think, and it's also got some extra tabs that I think relate to what I'm calling game macros, or just the game level factors that kind of we fold into as DFS players into our projections, like spread, over under, how many run or pass plays we're projecting a team to run, whether it's indoors or outdoors, what the weather's like, et cetera. Also some DVP metrics. I think we've talked a good bit on the show about DVP. It's something, if some people, I think, enjoy using that to kind of guide their line of construction, others don't. The model is trained around the incorporation of DVP metrics. However, we do want to give people who aren't into DVP the option to neutralize DVP. And that'll just set, metrics to, we have opponent adjusted metrics, which are on a continuous range from negative to positive. So just neutralizes those around zero, sets some of our non-negative metrics to league averages, et cetera. So it's, the opportunity to remove DVP if that's something you're inclined to do. In an actives tab, so a lot of our projections around market share is going to be informed by which players are active, which players are inactive. And then we do have our optimals tab, which has optimal lineups, and an exposure tab, just if you want to check to see kind of which players you're getting most exposure to. So I want to start, I think the process starts actually in the game macros tab, where you're just selecting what slate you're going to look at. So like we're going to look at Sunday main, so the combination of Sunday early and Sunday afternoon. That'll constrain your projections and optimals towards, around the, slates that we're playing in. We have our projections for these different positions. And, maybe I'll go back actually to the game macros. We have these projections that are either generated by ASA or, some Vegas stuff like spread over under. We're generating projections around kind of these standards that either Vegas has established or that our projection algorithms have established. But we do want to give people the opportunity to, fidget with the model inputs. If they think, for example, a game I think one interesting one is, Baltimore, San Francisco, where, the industry has this seems backwards. Isn't Baltimore favored in this game? Might have to go back and check these. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Baltimore -6 in the team column. But if you wanted to build, optimize a lineup conditional on, kind of an alternative set of outcomes, like maybe Baltimore onslaught stack, where maybe you want to build around the assumption that Baltimore is going to play this game out more similar to a team that's favored by like 15 points. You can go in and actually download, some of these inputs, edit them in Excel, re-upload them back into the model, and our projections will adjust based on, modifications you might want to make to the inputs. So I'm going to walk through kind of an example of that, not at the game level, but at the player level. I haven't updated our, input projections for like market share in the last in the last day, really since I think lock yesterday. But I was looking through our projections, and let's see, we got Tyreek Hill at the top. Tyler Boyd is kind of interestingly high. One guy I think we'll get to that I'm really bullish on this week is what's his name? Devontae Adams, and I'm not sure why he's not showing. But Devontae Adams, and we're kind of projecting what I think is a bit of an under projection. And, I'm looking through as maybe why that might be. And here are some kind of internal projection, or either internal historical metrics or projections, projection for how much market share Devontae Adams will have, how much of an air yard share he'll have in the game. We're doing our best on the back end to kind of update some of these algorithmic projections, maybe smooth them out with what we think is a little more likely. We want to give the user the opportunity to input some of their own projections if they kind of disagree with how we're looking at something. So they can do that by downloading, our set of projections and the inputs that come into them. And, people can edit, I guess, these inputs that we have to maybe kind of update to projections to really make them their own. I think that's, one way we can kind of gain an edge, is rather than relying on projections that we're, feeding into the algorithm, modify inputs to kind of really, make their projections unique and maybe different from the field, and gain some advantages there. So if we wanted to like update, some maybe a market share projection for Devontae Adams, we can do so with, you download the spreadsheet, and you'll have to kind of look through the different column names to understand what each metric coordinates to. I mean, I've, in building this tool, have a decent familiarity with what the different ones coordinate to, but I think, with enough kind of usage of it, you can get a feeling for how these, coordinate. And so the tab I'm looking at, where, I think our model is a little bit underweight on Devontae Adams, was his market share of targets, right? Like 22%, I think, is pretty low. And I think this tool is really useful for incorporating other ASA tools into it to really create more accurate projections. We could pull up like our volume efficiency app and get a sense of maybe lately what Devontae Adams has been doing from a market share standpoint while that's loading. So here's actually our predicted target market share column. And we can see we have Adams at 22%. And, some other guys, I think, let's see if I just sort by salary real quick. It should kind of order nicely. So we got Adams at the top, MVS, Allison, Lazard, Kumaro. We're projecting, like in particular, MVS and Allison. These are guys who we're saying, might have similar market or, relatively similar market share to Adams. And I think, if we look at how these, different receivers have been allocating or sharing targets recently, like say in the last month, let's see. So if I did like 2019, maybe do like last month, we can see that like Adams is really crushing that 22% market share projection. And really the guy kind of behind him is Alan Lazard, interestingly enough. The guy like, MVS is just really fallen off in terms of kind of the targets he's receiving. So, we could go ahead and like update these to maybe like, I don't know, 30, like if we did 30% Adams, MVS, if we, negatively boosted him down to like 5%, Geronimo, if we did to like 9%, and if we boosted Lazard up to 12, maybe, we wanted to boost Adams air yards to like, I don't know, I think he's like been 40% or so recently. We can save, oops, sorry, let me remove this filter here. So we have all of them. We can save this file out with kind of our, modification we've made to some of the model inputs, upload this CSV into our projection model. And all of a sudden, Adam's a guy who wasn't really popping, into some of our higher value receivers, all of a sudden now is kind of rising up our projection when we make some kind of amendments to the internal market share projections that, we've done. So I think there's good functionality with that. I know we haven't yet updated like Evan Ingram and Rhett Ellison have been out. So we have him expected inactive as 0, but we could update him, such that, our New York Giants tight ends in the tight end tab, we have Ingram projecting for points and Rhett Ellison projecting for points and Caden Smith with a really low projection. If we were to update, the inactive status of Ingram and Ellison, all of a sudden we'd see our projection model generating larger market share projection for Caden Smith, factoring that in with his, per target efficiency, all that stuff. So it's similar, concept of, downloading the table you're seeing to the right, downloading, editing in Excel, making some modifications to the projections that you might like to optimize around, and then uploading it through our upload tabs. And then you get the optimal tab, and there's a simple kind of lock fade input. So like, we have a lot of Christian McCaffrey. If you decide, the price is too high again this week and want to, fade CMC, you can drop him into the fade column, generate some optimals that, don't have CMCs. Here's Devontae Adams and your update optimal. Anyway, so that's kind of the tool. I don't want to take up too much time because I know we've already, spent a little bit of time, but I wanted to kind of give a tutorial so people have a good sense of how to use it, and maybe can get some ideas for how to, incorporate into their builds from a cash standpoint, or if they want to do tournament builds, updating some inputs that maybe reflect a game flow that you might want to build tournament lineups around. So yeah, that's the ASA, projection optimal tool. It's kind of a continuous work in process or in progress, trying to improve model performance, trying to improve aesthetic functionality on the front end. So I hope you guys will find it useful. It was free yesterday and will also be free through this weekend. And, if you guys have any feedback, reach out to us on Twitter, email. If there's changes you guys want to see made, we'll do what we can to try to incorporate those into the app design.
Yeah, and if you guys want to check that out, head on over to advancedsportsanalytics.com. That's definitely a great site where you can check out that tool. And like I said, Stewart, I'm sure he'll do whatever he can to help you guys out. One thing to help us out before we kind of get into the game-by-game breakdown, please hit the like and subscribe on the RotoGrinders channel here on this video. We'd really, really appreciate it. It helps us out a ton. So please, guys, like and subscribe on the channel. We'd appreciate that. Let's dive right in, though, Stewart. We're going to do the game-by-game breakdown. And we're going to start off first. We're going to start with the game that should be getting a lot of traction. We got the Tampa Bay Bucks. We got the Jacksonville Jaguars. 47.5 total. The Jags, they are home 1.5 point underdog. So this is a game that I think is intriguing because we got this Nick Foles and all the receivers to throw to, what to do with Leonard Fournette. And then, the Bucs, it's just like, take your pick, Evans or Godwin every week. It's one or the other. So a lot to chew on here. Where do you want to start first?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Fournette question is a good one that I'm kind of trying to work through. Obviously a really tough matchup for Fournette, and just because he did so well last week, his kind of price has been neutralized. There's not really much of a, salary break on him just because he performed so well last week. Man, I mean, I think the question with Fournette week in and week out is like the volume's there. Do we have just concerns about how efficient he's going to be given the touch he's going to get, especially against a really tough, Tampa Bay defense. I think their effectiveness against the run is really well documented. They're allowing the fewest fantasy points, adjusted fantasy points per rushing attempt. I think we all know how good Tampa Bay is on the ground. What I don't think gets talked about enough is how effective they are at limiting running backs in the air. Per running back target, they're allowing the 7th fewest fantasy points, and they are suppressing running back target market share at the 2nd highest rate in the league. These are all concerning, I guess, metrics for Fournette. Really, the question is he's got these concerns on a per touch, per target, per rush attempt basis. Is the volume we're going to expect with him, going to help him come through and kind of hit the value we need? I think that, the game total is intriguing and kind of, I think, would be good for Fournette in some of those Jacksonville pieces. I feel like we usually don't see them in this high total of a game. So I definitely think he's in play in cash, and I think obviously a strong tournament consideration. If we can get a couple touchdowns out of him and get his usual touch kind of allocation that we're used to, I think he's a strong play there. So I don't know. I think that's a pivotal decision in this game. You got any thoughts here? Is it a guy you're interested in or not really?
Yeah, like my initial read is just like, don't play Fournette, right? When I first saw the slate, I was like, I don't want to do that. But the more and more I kind of dove in and looked at it, like, he's starting to become more and more enticing. I don't know if that's for certain how I'm going to go, at least in cash games. Like, I know not to get off track of this game, but like I want to probably jam into Christian McCaffrey. I think a Miles Sanders with Howard's situation being in doubt. I think he's going to be quite intriguing. Depends on what site you're looking at and the salary. So there's already 2 running backs I might be putting in. So Fournette's definitely in the conversation, though. I do want to talk about these receivers, though. I think Chark is a phenomenal play. I think he's a really great tournament and cash play. I think he's going to absolutely dominate. And some of these other guys, too, like Conley's someone. I don't know if this is like people know this so well. I heard this on the podcast, on a podcast last week, and I didn't realize, like, Nick Foles and Conley, they played with the Chiefs together, and they kind of talked about how, Conley was like, yeah, one day we're going to be like a tandem together somewhere. So like they kind of have a little bit of a connection together that they've played with. So Conley's kind of a cheap receiver that I think you can look at there. Don't mind Dede as well. I think all these Jaguars receivers are in play and like really great tournament plays that you want to get exposure to, because again, this Bucs pass tunnel is something we really, really want to target. Chark's probably my favorite Jaguar receiver though. How about you, Stewart?
Yeah, I like Chark. Probably my favorite as well. Dede, I mean, I feel like all year we've kind of been looking for Dede to, his price has been pretty suppressed after kind of the early stage of the season, but it's, I think, been warranted. I mean, just really hasn't been getting there, hasn't been getting, the volume we would like, but, maybe there's, some contrarian opportunity there. Maybe you're thinking the return of Foles might help Dede. Yeah, Chark probably the guy I'm going to be keying on for Jacksonville. And then looking at the Tampa Bay side, I mean, we obviously have those receivers that Tampa Bay runs. Great plays week in and week out. Seems like it's kind of tough to try to stack both of them on the same team, but in isolation, both really strong plays. One guy, though, I'm pretty interested in on the Tampa Bay side is Ronald Jones. I mean, we saw Derrick Henry absolutely gash Jacksonville's run defense last week, and obviously Ronald Jones is a step down from Derrick Henry, but I mean, Jacksonville is entering Carolina territory as far as just the worst run defense in the NFL. They have been really bad against the run, and Ronald Jones has at times shown the ability to be effective on the ground, and he seems to have a pretty good, grip on the Tampa Bay lead back role. So definitely interested in Ronald Jones as maybe a pivot off of those receivers. But obviously, I mean, Evans and Godwin's so explosive. I think you're always incorporating them into your tournament consideration, week in and week out.
Yep, I agree with you on that. The Ronald Jones situation's a funny one. I just don't know how to approach it, but he's certainly in play. And that Jameis in the stacks with the Tampa Bay receivers is always in play in tournaments. Let's move on to the next game. We got the Green Bay Packers, New York Giants, 44.5 total. And listen, this is my Green Bay Packers. I love this team. I think they're going to be a really nice playoff team here. Hope they can kind of find their identity and get things straight. And I know there's a squeaky wheel with Aaron Jones there, possibly getting him more involved. Jamal Williams is a really interesting price over on DraftKings at 4.5K. I think he's a cash game option you can consider with the amount of targets he gets on PPR sites specifically. And then Devontae Adams, his price is just too cheap at 7K. We talked about his market share and everything in the optimization tool that you showed. I love Devontae Adams. I think he's one of the best receiver options. So talking about this Green Bay side, I think there's a lot to like.
Yeah, I mean, really agree with Adams. I mean, 7,000 for a guy who is getting as much, volume as he is. And it's really just like a dream matchup for, Green Bay pass throwers and pass catchers. New York Giants are allowing the most fantasy points per target to opposing receivers. And, Adams is a guy who is probably going to be getting anywhere from 30 to 40% of targets thrown his way. Like, I just think he is in a dream spot and one of the more lockable players, I think, on the slate. And at 7,000, like, he's not even really a guy, we have to find ways to save for. Like, I think he's just at a really great price, really great matchup, and just has an incredible role with the, Packers pass game that is pretty effective. It's a pretty good game total. It's actually, I mean, it's a very good, total for Green Bay at 45. Green Bay expected to get like 6 or 6.5. Love Adams. I'll probably be attacking this game. I think Giants through the air. That's typically how I'm wanting to go after them. Rodgers to Adams, great for tournaments. It seems like Rodgers would be in play even in cash. Adams, I think, great cash play, great tournament play. Really liking the Green Bay air side on the ball.
Yep, definitely do as well. The one question I have is there might be weather there this weekend, so I don't know. I saved that for like Saturday night, Sunday, though, to really get worried. But just check on that because that could obviously change some of the situations and how you want to approach the game. How about the Giants side of the ball? They're moving Sterling Shepard back to the slot. I saw that. So, back to more of his natural role. So I think that could help him a little bit. I just don't know what I want to do here. Barkley, again, his price has gone down, but he just hasn't been right. And I don't know, since that injury, he hasn't been as great. So I'm kind of torn on what to do with Giants here. Like, how would you kind of run this back? Any guys in cash games you like here on this side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bit to chew on the Giants side. I mean, the Saquon thing, it's kind of tough to figure out. He has not been very strong this year. His price has come down, but it's a really good matchup for him. I mean, the Packers are allowing the third most adjusted fantasy points per rush attempt behind the atrocious, Panthers and Jaguars defenses, and seems to be a good matchup for him. I mean, Green Bay is doing a pretty good job at limiting running back pass catching efficiency, but they are kind of funneling. They've been pretty effective at funneling passes away from receivers and towards the running back and tight end positions, and those are kind of the two spots I'm looking to attack them. Not sure if Saquon reaches cash consideration because I feel like I might be a little more inclined for like Fournette, just given his little more stable role. But I definitely think Saquon's in play in tournaments.
It's tough, Stewart, because like we knew that this injury, right? He rushed back from the injury. It was clear, right? It happened like week 3, I think the injury happened, something and he came back week 7, right? And now it's week 12, right? Like this is probably the timetable of when like he probably should have been healthy, maybe like a week before, but I want to be ahead of the curve, right? Because the second he pops off for a game, like that price is going to shoot up. So in tournaments, if you haven't like been buying on him, it's not a bad idea to start now, or maybe just continue to die with him and just ride it out to the end of the season. But the Packers are a spot where splash plays happen, right? You can break off a ton of splash plays against that team. Yeah. And Barkley's a guy that can make splash plays. So I do think he's more of a tournament play than a cash game guy, and someone that you might want to start mixing in exposure to, because at that price, he's just too cheap.
Yep. One last guy I do want to think about in cash. Not sure he's got a great ceiling for tournaments, but we talked about Rhett Ellison and Ingram are going to be out, so it's going to be kind of the Caden Smith show at tight end. And I don't know that's the most entertaining show in town, but Green Bay has been very attackable at tight end. They're allowing the second most adjusted fantasy points per tight end target and per tight end air yard, which I think Caden Smith got like 5 catches for 17 yards or something like ridiculously.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It was 6 targets, 5 catches, 17 yards, and a touchdown. And the best part is his longest catch was 11 yards. So the rest were like 4 for 6 yards.
Interesting. But yeah, I mean, hey, 5 catches at the price tag, like we'll get it done. And we're talking about interest in McCaffrey and wanting to get to Devontae Adams and having some interest in some of these mid-tier running backs. Like, I mean, I don't know. I'm usually someone who's spending down at tight end, and it seems like Green Bay is a spot we can attack. Caden Smith has that role pretty carved out, and hey, I mean, I'll take 5 catches for maybe 25 yards from Caden Smith if we can get it for 2,900. But
yep, that is certainly in play. Let's head on over to the next game. And we got the New York Jets. We got the Cincinnati Bengals. This has a 41.5 total here. Jets, they are on the road, and they're 3-point favorites. The thing that just stuck out to me, and I thought I saw this early in the week, I thought this total was a lot higher. And like I said, with Thanksgiving and everything, I haven't been as plugged on the spreads. I thought this thing was at 47 earlier in the week. So if it's gone down 6 points, that'd be crazy to me. I think Andy Dalton, because he got ruled the starter, I think that's kind of intriguing here as an option that we can go to. What do you kind of think of Andy Dalton here as a cheap guy?
Yeah, I like Andy Dalton a lot. He's shown up as one of our more valuable quarterbacks in our optimizer. And I mean, the Jets are a team we know are going to be tough against the run, but can be attacked in the pass game. I mean, so I think it's, 4,700, good spot. Be interesting to see if AJ Green decides he's going to play. It seems unlikely, but
I don't think he's playing, man. It's just there's no incentive. He doesn't gain any money from playing, so it doesn't make a ton of sense. And I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe the total says 41. It says it opened at 41. I don't know. The totals next to it are 47, so I must have read it wrong earlier in the week. But Stewart, I talk about this all the time. Why do we want to play guys in a 41 total? But here I am. I'm here Team Andy Dalton. Let's load up on him. But it's mainly a price play, right? That's why I showed up in the optimizer ton, because it helps in jam in guys like Christian McCaffrey and all those other stud options that we're going to look at.
Yeah, I think it's not a bad play at all. I think he's in playing cash. Tournaments, I don't know. It could be tough. I feel like, Dalton's ceiling is a bit low. But,
well, there's one guy to run it back with, man. Who's the guy? You know the call.
Robbie Anderson.
No, Tyler Boyd, man. You got to run it.
I'm saying running it with Cincinnati.
Yeah, my bad. I worded it wrong.
Yeah, Tyler Boyd would figure to be the guy. I'm intrigued by Auden Tate. He is real cheap and has been kind of Cincinnati's preferred deeper threat, although they don't really work downfield that much. I saw an interesting stat. I don't really know what to make of it, but the Jets are allowing the league lowest wide receiver ADOT. So it's a team defense that teams seem to be, attacking underneath, I guess, relative to how, teams typically play out against other opponents. Not really sure what that means. Does that mean that they're just going to be feeding short guys like Tyler Boyd, or does that mean that, the Jets are going to effectively suppress, the depth of, wide receiver targets such that, Boyd's going to be getting super, I don't know. I'm not really sure what to make of that, really, if anything. But, Boyd had a great game last week. The price hasn't become super inflated. And, I think Andy Dalton's probably a more effective quarterback for these receivers than Finley. So definitely intrigued there. Jets side of the ball, like Cincinnati, we can get at, pretty much everywhere. Love Bell, I think, is in play just given his, dynamic role as a pass catcher and runner. Darnold, I think, is an interesting play, although 6'1", it does feel like there are maybe a little better, cheaper options than Darnold, and there's better, he's kind of in a weird price range. And Robbie Anderson's a guy who, we keep waiting on to, have, big be part of kind of a big tournament winning lineup, and it just hasn't happened yet. Might never happen, but certainly I think worth some consideration as a bring back option. Those kind of guys I'm looking at on Jet side.
Yeah, definitely just looking at those receivers and maybe bring it back with. I'm not the biggest Le'Veon Bell guy, but I get it if you want to go him. It's the Bengals, right? It makes sense. Price is 7.2K. I think he's someone that you can consider there. Don't hate it. It's definitely some of my bias leaking in there, but again,
I'm with you. I don't think I've played Lev Bell once in cash this week or this year. Probably won't be happening, but
I played him once and I got a good game out of him. So I'm trying to just take my money and run, I think. But again, like 41.5 total, right? I don't want to just game stack it up all the way and load up on it. But I do think it's one of the better lower totals of the week. Let's go on to the Titans, the Colts, 43.5 total here. And man, Derrick Henry, he was the talk of the town last week. I'm wondering if it's going to be the same thing this week here against the Colts. As the season goes on, he just gets better and better. The man just doesn't stop. Do you have any interest in Derrick Henry, or is the price and matchup too much this time?
Yeah, I don't know. This game in general just kind of feels like a blag game for me. I loved Henry last week because he was going up against the Jaguars, and his price wasn't super elevated, and now he's going up against a stouter run defense. The Colts are going to try to slow the ball down, I think, in a pretty big way. So, yeah, I don't know. There's not too much I'm really interested in this game. I do think it's worth noting Indianapolis as a defense tends to allow kind of an elevated, target volume to opposing tight ends. We got Delaney Walker out, Jonnu Smith returning that starting role. Could be, his price isn't like as low as it was, that the week past where he was kind of getting his first shot as a starter. But this game just total wise, team wise, feels a bit like kind of a pass game for me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Let's move on. Let's go over to the next game because, again, I don't want to talk about this one. The only guy is maybe Doyle. I probably should have mentioned him because of all the receivers are out, but that's the only guy I'm really considering. It feels like more of a floor cash play. Let's move on over Redskins, Panthers. And again, I talked about not going crazy with these 40 totals, but we got Christian McCaffrey, right? We have to love him in this spot against the Redskins. They have a 24.5 implied total against the Skins at home. I mean, this seems like a perfect spot for Christian McCaffrey. And it feels like this is the week where we can have the money for it. There's not a ton of guys that we want to spend up on and load up on. So I think this is a week we can definitely get McCaffrey in there.
Yeah, I agree. We have some, I think, viable cheap quarterback options, which in weeks past hasn't been the case. We got some good, receivers at kind of the mid tier. So, yeah, I think this is a, plug and play McCaffrey week. The guy just seems to be, matchup proof. I was off him last week just because the matchup, and it just doesn't matter. Total, he gets to 30, whether he gets a touchdown or not. It's just so dynamic in the run game and the pass game, has 100-yard receiving, 100-yard rushing potential every week. I think it's just a lock and load McCaffrey week. 10-5, low total, but Carolina's got a, double-digit spread. I think probably just best not to overthink this one. And the guy's floor is insane, right? It just seems like impossible for him to not get to 30 points. So yeah,
Stewart, I don't know what your optimizer is doing over there, but just make it so it locks McCaffrey in. I don't care if it's saying not to, just make it sure put a little tool in there that says, hey, make sure Christian McCaffrey's locked. The CMC
lock checkbox. He's actually showing as our top value running back, even at 10-5. Lev Bell is actually showing second, which is interesting. But yeah, CMC just put him in that lock tab for sure.
Good. I'm glad to hear. Optimizers need that nowadays. I hear some people touting not to play him, and even last week, I didn't play him, and it worked out. But I don't know, man. McCaffrey just every week is 30 points. It's amazing. And I'll take those points every time. Let's talk about running it back, right? Who on the outside do you want to go to? I think there's only one guy. It's simple. It's Terry McLaurin. That's it. And I think he's got a really nice price on a FanDuel specifically. I saw he was 5.8K. That's a nice price tag. There's a couple guys in that range you can consider as well and just a little bit up. But I think running it back with McLaurin isn't a bad idea. Here's the one problem. I have to trust Dwayne Haskins, and that's a tough ask. Can you do that in cash games? Tournaments, I get it, right? You can always take a shot, and we know the upside of McLaurin has. But do you trust Haskins enough to play a McLaurin?
No, not in cash. And I think in cash in particular, I'm not even that concerned about, running for CMC back. I mean, but yeah, tournaments like he would appear to be, the cash run back pairing with CMC. I don't know. I mean, at 39 total and a 10-point, Carolina's a 10-point favorite. Like, might just be a game to just build an onslaught stack with and just not try to run back, any Washington guys. I mean, Carolina's a team I would like to try to attack with running back on the ground, but Washington seems to have just a stable of ineffective running backs such that, I can't, I'm looking now at just snap percentages from last week. Darius Geis led Washington running backs in snap count at 43% of snaps. Adrian Peterson, 33%, Wendell Smallwood, 27%. Like, none of those guys are playable, no matter how good the matchup is. So I don't know. I probably won't be trying to stack up this game per se. If I'm building Carolina, it's going to be onslaught type stack. Yeah.
All righty, let's move on over. Let's go to the next game. We got the 49ers, the Ravens. They are 5.5 favorites here, and we got some weather that could possibly be lurking. But let's talk about Lamar Jackson, man. He's been phenomenal, been too tough to stop. But the question is the price too much? I mean, he's the highest priced quarterback here over on, I think, FanDuel. DraftKings, I don't think he is. I think he's 7K over on
Mahomes,
right?
Mahomes is a little above him.
Yeah, Mahomes is above him. And 7K, again, I think that's not expensive enough, but he's priced for the matchup too, right? The Niners aren't going to be an easy spot for him. So how do you approach this? Again, there's cheap guys like an Andy Dalton we talked about, a Nick Foles. Those are guys that you can consider as, value plays. But would you rather just jam in a Lamar Jackson? And does that hinder your tournament upside if you're jamming in a quarterback at that price here?
I mean, you would think it does, but Lamar Jackson seems to be one of those guys that, has such a high ceiling just with the value he creates through his legs and in the air that, I think he's got tournament winning upside. And at 7K, there are more expensive quarterbacks that we could play. I mean, we talked about CMC being matchup proof. Lamar seems to be – those two guys I feel like are in kind of a league of their own in terms of just whatever the matchups say, just throw that out the window. I think one application with our optimizer is if you don't want to fully wipe out DVP impact, so not going with the full neutralize, but just download DVP and just neutralize San Francisco's DVP because Lamar Jackson isn't popping in our optimals, but it feels like, and I know that's because of the tough matchup, but he seems like a guy that just doesn't matter who's playing. He's going to get his. And this is, first time we might actually get 4 quarters out of Lamar Jackson, which we haven't gotten the past 2 weeks. He's a guy I think that's in consideration for cash if you are finding, other places to maybe spend down. But I think my cash build will probably be such that not that I think he's a bad play. I just think, my spending at quarterback's probably going to be on the lower end so I can get up at some of the other positions. But for tournaments, Jackson, strong play, correlates really well with his pretty much 2 primary targets in Mark Andrews and Hollywood Brown. Thinking consideration for cash and tournaments for sure. And does feel like a bit of a matchup-proof play, at least from what we've seen so far.
Yeah. Do you have a lean, Mark Andrews or Hollywood Brown? Which one you would go? I think they're both fine, but I don't know. I don't have this strong lean.
Yeah, for tournaments, probably Mark Andrews. Just I think in general, paying up at tight end tends to be a bit on the contrarian side. And with guys like Kelsey and Kittle on the main slate, I could see Andrews going a bit under-owned. I think, let me check my notes, but San Francisco is very tough against the tight end, allowing the 4th fewest fantasy points per tight end target and allowing really short targets to tight ends. They have the 2nd lowest adjusted tight end ADOT. And Andrews is a guy that I think we would like to kind of get downfield. Tough spot, but I think it's, a good, contrarian play. And he just historically, at least in 2019, has correlated really well with Lamar Jackson. So that's probably where I would lean between those two.
Yeah, you're giving me flashbacks to the Thanksgiving slate. I faded Jason Witten, and I felt great after the first game because I played Jesper, man. I got the
Oh,
Jesper
nice.
touchdown. I felt like I was, on top of the world. And then Jason Witten in like the second toughest matchup against tight ends, the Buffalo Bills, ran wild. So I was pretty tilted by that. But
Yeah.
listen, I got my Jesper call. I got the touchdown. I was so happy about that one. But yeah, this game again, like I don't know about running it back with any Niners, like maybe Kittle. But that's the only Niner I really want exposure to here. I just don't see any interest in any of these other guys, right? Just Kittle maybe in tournaments and move on.
Yeah, it's a really tough spot. I mean, I think early in the year there was, some chatter like, oh, this isn't the Ravens defense of old. Like if you check the stats from the last couple months, this Ravens defense is, I think, in the same category as San Francisco and New England. Maybe it just a notch below, but this Ravens defense has been really good.
That's because they got Jimmy Smith back. Like that helps a ton. I mean, in games when he doesn't play, it's like so massive. So if he gets hurt again, feel free to target the Ravens defense. They get worse. Let's go to the next one. We got the Eagles. We got the Miami Dolphins. And listen, anyone against Miami is in play. Even Carson Wentz, who looked horrible last week. Man, that one throw to Miles Sanders on the side. I know the wind was there, but that was horrific. But yeah, I guess we'll start with Miles Sanders. He's a guy that you definitely have to consider. I think he's a strong play. It looks like we're probably going to have Howard out again. I know Ertz is struggling with an injury, so we might be looking at some of these pass catchers again, or maybe even a Dallas Goedert. He might be a cheapie that we look at the tight end position. Where do you want to go here, Stewart? Because we have tons and tons of options here against Miami.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of a spot where like it was the one that Mayfield was in last week, and I think there's reason to like Mayfield just given how much or how little pressure we could project Miami to apply. And I think same as going for Wentz. I just not sure that I trust Wentz to do a whole lot with that added time. And I mean, yeah, the price tag is interesting, but I don't know. I think paying down for a guy like Dalton, or I mean Foles is similarly priced. I think in just about as good of a spot. So I don't know. I'm not. I think Wentz is in cash game consideration. I feel like I might be going elsewhere, but I don't know. We'll have to see by the time Sunday rolls around. And yeah, Miles Sanders is a guy I'm interested in. Miami is really attackable for running backs, particularly pass catching running backs. They're allowing the most opponent adjusted fantasy points per running back target, and I think that's kind of where Miles Sanders would project to get a lot of his value, right? Like they've been using Jay Ajayi through the ground, but I still think Miles Sanders is going to be their preferred, guy in the 2-minute drill, third down running back. And I think it really sets up nicely for pass catching running backs against Miami. I guess the one issue is, as 10-point favorites, you do have some concerns that maybe they won't be as pass heavy as you would like, but the price tag is still pretty low on Sanders. I think, his price has remained low just because he's run into some tough, hasn't performed well and run into some tough matchups lately, but does feel like a potential get-right game for Miles Sanders and, could be, I think, in really strong cash consideration to help you get some of those more expensive skill players you might want to.
Yeah, well, Stuart, when you're 10-point favorites, you like to run the ball a lot. And there's a guy who will run the ball a lot possibly, and he's 3K. Little revenge, right, too? Former Miami Dolphin, Jay Ajayi. Listen, I doubt I'm actually playing him. It's fun to, bring it up after all the Patrick Laird nonsense, too, last week, But it might be Jay Ajayi season as the cheap running back this week. If you're looking for the cheapie, the guy you have to play in, the cheap 3K range, he might be the guy.
Yeah, I mean, but Philadelphia is projected for about 27 implied points or something. I think in tournaments, if you get Jay Ajayi to fall into the end zone a couple times, and not sure what his snap count or touch allocation was last week, but he is on the field getting touches, in a 10-point game where Philadelphia is favored by double digits. So hey, not the worst idea I've heard. 3,000, super cheap. Yeah. I think it's an interesting consideration.
Yeah, no. So I just wanted to mention it. And the guy I'm probably not actually going to play, but it's fun to mention at the 3K range. Anyone to run it back with the Dolphins? You want to run it back with the Devontae Parker? He sees targets, but I don't know. I'm not excited.
Yeah, I mean, I think last week we were talking about how Philadelphia has been pretty tough on opposing receivers, and they did a pretty good job shutting down a good Seattle pass attack. I don't know, not terribly enthused by any of the Philly guys on the other side. I think you would assume Parker is kind of the preferred guy, though, if you are going to try to run that back.
Alrighty, let's move on to the next one. Actually, before we do that real quick, I do want to mention some news that popped up. We got Juju Smith-Schuster. He is going to be out. We got James Conner. He is doubtful. Damian Williams, he's officially out for Sunday, right? So that's going to be interesting when we get to the Chiefs. And then Evan Ingram in the Giants game we talked about, he's out already. And we got Golden Tate's out as well. So that could help out some of the Giants pass catchers a little bit. Just want to drop that news that I ended up stumbling upon on Twitter there. Also, guys, if you're watching this video, please give us the like and subscribe on the video. We would really, really appreciate it. Let's dive in. Let's go on to the next one here, Stewart, though. We got the Cleveland Browns, the Pittsburgh Steelers, 39.5 total. Just mention those guys who are going to be out, right? We got Juju. He's going to be out, doubtful on a guy like James Conner. Is it Benny Snell season? Are Jalen Samuels interesting? Do you want the Delvin Hodge, the Duckman? I don't think I have any interest in this game. I just think it's like a really good stay away with 39.5 total. I just could see this game going like 20-13 and just being a really boring one.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Pittsburgh's going to, play hide the quarterback, just going to try to move it slow. Cleveland DST maybe is, one area I might have some interest. But, I think a stay away game as well. Cleveland's got, intriguing pieces on offense, but really tough matchup going into Pittsburgh. And, man, who knows? I mean, it feels like, anyone could get thrown out of this game. Like if, I don't know.
You're not wrong. Actually, I forgot that this is the rematch of the not so great game. So
unfortunately, our optimizer doesn't consider ejection probability, but I think there's some probability there for some of these guys. Who knows?
You're not wrong, but I think it's a good stay away game. It's a good catch me up game. Let's move on to the next one. We got the Rams. We got the Cardinals, 47.5 total. And the Rams are favorites. Jared Goff hasn't thrown a touchdown in November, but 25 points have to come somewhere, right? Because Vegas is always right. I think Jared Goff, and listen, this sounds gross to say, I think Jared Goff is a really good tournament play with these receivers. I think it's definitely something you can be intrigued by. Obviously, tight ends against the Cardinals, you have to consider them as well. Overall, I think the Rams are a strong tournament play because everyone has a bad taste in their mouth about them.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good get right spot for Goff. Cardinals allowing the second most adjusted fantasy points per pass attempt, and we would have reason to believe that Goff isn't a terrible quarterback. If we take kind of his long form. I think he's an interesting tournament play, cheap. He's got some good targets to throw to. I don't know that I have a real opinion on kind of what the preferred stacking option is. Like, obviously, I guess now it's just down to Woods and Kupp, like both, good receivers, I think worth some consideration. But Gerald Everett's got a bit of an injury bug, right? I think. Would be too bad because Arizona.
Yeah, I saw there's some news on him with the injury. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but you know how it is, right? If there's like a tight end there, you plug him in. The question is, I think Everett's the better play than Higbee, but if you have to pick between one or the other and the other scores, and you have the guy who didn't, you're going to be so tilted by it. That's the one problem.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting. I think just baseline Kyler's not a guy I'm super interested in, but I do think it matchup in particular sets up pretty poorly for him. Los Angeles is pretty good at limiting quarterbacks in their effectiveness as scramblers. They're allowing the fewest adjusted fantasy points per quarterback scramble, allowing the seventh lowest, scramble rate to opposing quarterbacks. And, Kyler's a guy, if you, want to play him, you're expecting to get some value out of him from, his legs. And I think it's a spot where he could struggle to do that. So Kyler, I think, is a guy we spend a lot of time talking about the guys we do want to play, but I think it's also valuable to talk about some guys we don't want to play. I think Kyler, for me, is a guy whose upside I'm pretty dubious about given the matchup.
Well, I mean, they're going to put up some points, right? And this receiving core is not that great overall. Is Christian Kirk a guy that you want to buy in on? Like, that connection's getting better with Murray. He's someone that as the season went on, I kind of wanted to, buy more and more of, and I thought the price would continue to go up. And I don't know. Basically what I'm asking is Christian Kirk a guy in tournaments you think that you want to get some exposure to?
Yeah, I think he's worth getting some kind of one-off exposure. I think historically he hasn't, correlated super well with Kyler. So I think he's a guy to kind of sprinkle in as like a unstacked play as, around a more, correlated primary build. I mean, the price is still good for Kirk. 5.7's up a little bit, but he's been kind of getting better as the season goes on. And, just David Johnson is, kind of, I feel like maybe one, knock against Kirk is we thought maybe like a guy like David Johnson would, have some role in the passing game. And I mean, he's just, totally gone. I think it's, there's good opportunity for Kirk, and we'd expect pretty good volume for him. I think worth some consideration.
Yeah, he's a guy I think you should consider there. Let's head over to the next game. We got the Raiders. We got the Chiefs. 51 total here. Chiefs, they're 9.5-point home favorites. And, man, when you got those, 10-point home favorites, you got to love the running backs. And with the injury going on, LaShawn McCoy at 4.8K, like, how do we get away from him? I mean, he seems like a guy that you're just going to lock and load in your lineups. I get it. He doesn't get a ton of attempts, right? That's the one problem. The attempts aren't there. But with Williams being out, he should get some more opportunity there. So, I don't know. Am I crazy to think that McCoy's going to be a cash game guy we're looking at and a tournament guy that has crazy upside?
Yeah, I like McCoy a lot. Oakland's pretty good against the run, but as 10-point favorites, we'll kind of expect, we can project, I guess, Kansas City to try to assert their will on the run. And, McCoy still has, I think, some pass catching pop, and that's really where the Raiders are susceptible. They're allowing, the second most fantasy points per running back target behind only the Lions. And both those teams are kind of in a league of their own as far as just allowing running backs to get some high value targets. Definitely interested in McCoy. I think as a runner, as a pass catcher, and at the price, I mean, I think there's a lot to like there in cash and at tournaments for sure.
No, I agree with you. I think he's going to be one of the better cash game options and a really good tournament play as well. Definitely want to get some exposure to him. And I expect the Chiefs to just lay it down on them, right? They've had some games where they kind of they slowed down the pace and just against the Titans, and then the Titans end up coming back and winning. And this is a game where they're fighting for the division, right? The Raiders are actually surprisingly in it. So I expect the Chiefs just to run up the score. Same with Andy Reid, right? That's what he does. So I think it just lines up for them to put up a big number this week. So getting these Chiefs exposure, going up to Mahomes. I don't think people are going to want to pay up for him. They'd rather just play Lamar Jackson instead. So I think there could be some really nice ownership on Mahomes being low. They have an implied total of 30. Tyreek Hill, I know he's dealing with that hamstring, and Sammy Watkins is very cheap. Listen, I like Tyreek Hill, but Watkins at his price, I mean, talk to me about that one. 5.4K for Watkins on DK. I know he's got the Q tag next to him. He didn't practice because of an illness, but I don't know, man. I think 5.4K, he's really intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, you would think his value is pretty good at that price. It's just Watkins this year, ever since that first week, has kind of felt like fool's gold, something like I've been chasing a decent amount, especially I think I've played him a decent amount in some of these showdown slates, and he has a pretty low floor, it seems like. I mean, I think 2 catches, 17 yards is within the realm of possibility for Watkins. So I think he's a really strong tournament play. I might just be biased by some past plays that I've had on Watkins where I'm a little concerned about his floor. At the price tag, I think that there's good value to be had there. I felt like I've been chasing fool's gold with Watkins a bit this year. Tyreek Hill, the price is up. I don't know that he's a guy I'm going to be reaching for in cash, but Oakland can be beat at receiver, and in particular beat deep. They have, teams really seem to want to attack them downfield, and Tyreek Hill's probably the best in the business at doing that. So I think worth some consideration in tournaments. But the price tag, the fact that he's 1,900 more than Devontae Adams, I just don't know that that's a price I can stomach on Hill. Cash.
Yeah, it's a tough price to stomach, but you know what his upside is. I mean, the thing is, he had the hamstring injury, and earlier in the week it was questionable, but now he's a full practice on Wednesday, so he seems to be fine, but it is a hamstring injury, right? Those things can act up, so I don't know. I think with that, possible, who knows what can happen in game, I'm going to kind of stay away and just kind of look at a guy like maybe a Travis Kelce. I think he's a great play. Someone I'm going to love on a site like FanDuel where you're just forced to pay up at tight end. I think he's like just like the lock and load tight end play. I love him. I think he's in a phenomenal spot. So going to load up on some Kelsey for sure at tight end. I'm sure you are. What about the Raiders side of the ball? Anyone there you want to run it back with or get some exposure to? Because I'm just kind of out on the Raiders.
Yeah, not the most compelling side. Josh at a 10-point dog. Josh Jacobs is, potentially not going to really factor in to the game in as huge of a way as you would like. Jalen Richard. I mean, last year I had some decent success just like locking in Jalen Richard at 3.3 when the Raiders were awful and just getting 6 catches for 40 yards out of him. I think he's in consideration. Darren Waller, probably a guy I will not be going to this week. Kansas City is really tough against the tight end. They're allowing the fewest adjusted fantasy points per target and tight end air yard. Waller hasn't been, I think, as good, and his role has kind of declined a little bit. You got the Foster Moreau, touchdown vulture risk. I think Waller is probably a guy I might just be Xing out, in tournament consideration and definitely in cash.
All righty, let's move on to the next one. We got the Chargers. We got the Broncos, 38.5 total here. And, man, I don't know what to exactly do with this game. 38.5 total, not a lot to like. The running backs, they split carries and opportunities. It's just not pretty. Keenan Allen's cheap at 6.8K, and I like him on PPR sites. But I don't know. I don't know. I just don't want to touch this game too much. Is that weird to say, Stewart?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot to like, particularly on the Charger side where there's some, splitting of duties and just a really tough matchup. I mean, Denver is pretty tough everywhere, but I like Phillip Lindsay a decent amount. He's really cheap, and I'm pulling up his rush attempt split, compared to Royce Freeman. And I mean, they're literally just diverging like this. I mean, Phillip Lindsay he got 86% of Denver rush attempts last week. Royce Freeman got 13%. And the Chargers are a team that, can be attacked on the ground. They're allowing the 5th most adjusted fantasy points per rush attempt and the 5th highest adjusted running back target market share. Phillip Lindsay is a guy that can get it done in a couple ways. I really like him as a tournament play, and I think might even sneak into cash viability, seeing how kind of the roster construction shapes out. But he seems to just have full control of the Denver backfield, and I don't think it's the worst spot for Denver running backs. The total is a bit concerning, and just the pace at both these teams play at is somewhat concerning. But at 5-1, pretty cheap. We kind of talked about how much we liked McCoy and McCaffrey, and it just leaves somewhat limited running back roster spots and from a cash build standpoint. But definitely, I think worth considerations in tournament builds.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like I said, I don't know what to do with this game. Allen's the one guy that might sneak into my consideration, but I don't know. It's tough. I have to trust Phillip Rivers throwing the football, and I don't trust him throwing a football anymore. So I don't know. Not so much else to like in this one. Stewart, any final thoughts, man? We kind of gone through all the games, and NFL, they gave us only 3 4:00 games again, so we got to deal with that. Not a good mix of the red zone, but hey, should be a fun football Sunday, right?
Yeah, I think so. We've had, I think, a couple just tough slates, tough pricing, and I think there's some value that's already opening up. I think it's going to be a fun slate, and pretty excited for Sunday to roll around. Got no teams on bye. It should be a fun one.
Yeah, this one kind of feels like more of a breath of fresh air. I felt like the last one's building lineups, I was getting squeezed, right? I felt like I was suffocating. Every time there'd be another play I'd want, $500 felt like $1,000 or 200 felt like 400, but feels a little looser so far. So I'm kind of excited for this slate. Excited to dive in. Thanks a lot for joining us, guys. Feel free to check out Stewart and, Brandon over at Advanced Sports Analytics. They appreciate that. We also would appreciate you to hit that like and subscribe if you enjoyed this show. Really appreciate doing the show with you guys and, giving you the content. But we got to get on out of here. Thanks a lot for joining us. For me, Travis Mangone, and Stewart, we're out of here.